I'm joined now by Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat of California, previously served on the bipartisan January 6th committee, as well as lead manager during the first impeachment of Donald Trump, is currently a candidate for U.S. Senate in California. Congressman, given that you were part of a committee that recommended 4 criminal charges against Donald Trump, what's your reaction to the news about the subpoena from Jack Smith's office to the vice president?
Well, I'm very pleased that they've taken this step. And Chris, I think you're exactly right. You don't start with a witness like Mike Pence, but you might finish with a witness of the significance of the vice president, the former vice president of the United States. So this may tell us that the January 6th investigation of the Justice Department is at a pretty advanced stage. And all I can say to that is it's about time. But I would also mention this, the clip you played of Pence saying Congress has no right to his testimony. That's really beside the point. What Pence is really saying, apparently, in that interview is Congress has no right to get my testimony before I put it in a book, because he wrote about some of this in his book. And more than that, it's not a question of whether Congress has a right to it. The American people have a need for his testimony, and there's nothing at all that would have precluded him from testifying before Congress, nor is there anything that would preclude him from cooperating with the Justice Department, as he ought to do if he cares about anything beyond his presidential ambitions. So I think it's a positive step for the Justice Department, may signal that they're finally coming to, fruition in their long-running investigation. But also, there is no good excuse for Mike Pence to do anything but cooperate here.
As someone who navigated part of the very difficult and drawn-out process of securing congressional testimony in various forms, which was challenged by various members of the Trump administration along a number of lines with a bunch of different arguments, I guess, do you anticipate, given that you're a lawyer and given you have some expertise here, the ability of the vice president to essentially stonewall and drag this out with claims of executive privilege or immunity of some kind?
He will probably have that ability, although a lot less so with the Justice Department than he had with Congress. And yes, we went around and around with the vice president for weeks and months trying to get him to come and testify. Even witnesses who did come in and testify often asserted completely bogus privileges. And we understood it would take us an endless period of time to compel them in court. And we made a decision to get what we could get in a timely way. The Justice Department, though, has much greater power to enforce its subpoenas. We had to go hat in hand to them when witnesses refused. They, on the other hand, can prosecute people who refuse. So they have a lot more power. But nonetheless, if the vice president wants, he can also try to draw this out. If he does, I think it ought to be exposed for what it is, and that is putting his presidential hopes above the clear and strong public interest in his testimony.
I want to play for you something you said about the Proud Boys in the course of the testimony and hearings on the January 6th committee. Of course, as I just noted, there's a seditious conspiracy trial against several members of that organization. Lots of evidence presented today and in the trial, essentially linking them to taking public directives from Trump, not some private back channel, just, responding to sort of call and response. I want to play what you had to say on the Proud Boys and then ask you a question about it. Take a listen.
In this report received on December 26th, a Secret Service field office relayed a tip that had been received by the FBI. According to the source of the tip, the Proud Boys plan to march armed into D.C. They think that they will have a large enough group to march into D.C. armed, the source reported, and will outnumber the police so they can't be stopped. The source went on to say their plan is to literally kill people.
How important is to you, obviously a lot of the focus tends to be on Trump, individuals like John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark. But how important are these prosecutions for seditious conspiracy, this very rarely charged but sort of, to me, kind of appropriately targeted charge of the Oath Keepers and now the Proud Boys, in terms of the making sure this never happens again?
Well, I think that's exactly it. The charging of such serious charges signals that the Justice Department, that the American people take an attack on our democracy and our Capitol as among the most serious offenses that it is possible to commit. And I think part of the Justice Department thinking, and they're exactly right, is yes, they could have charged simply battery or they could have charged trespass. None of those things would have been sufficient to equate with the seriousness of this, nor would it have been an adequate deterrent to others. And a big part of what we did in the January 6th committee, what the Justice Department is doing in bringing people to justice, is an effort to deter a future attack. One of the takeaways we hope people got from our hearings was that our democracy came very close to being defeated, and we are not out of the woods yet. I would also say that the seriousness of those charges, seldom used charges like seditious conspiracy, also may be an indication that the department is considering other seldom used charges like insurrection that apply, I think, with great force to the conduct of Donald Trump.
Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you for your time this evening.